Hey.
Okay, Vanessa, I'll do a quick introduction for you. And Jackson, of course, will share the screen to you. Vanessa works for the USGS in the Pacific Flyway. She works in Battleground and I believe is coming to us from her desk at home in Battleground, although she's normally in the Portland office when she's at work. She has family out here. We met her a couple years ago because she oversees shorebirds, and I did a little shorebirding for her a couple years ago. So take it away, Vanessa.
Okay. And actually, I work for U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
No, USGS is for the smart people. So, okay. Thank you guys all for allowing me to present today. I'll go ahead and share my screen. Let's see if I can get this. Let's see. Can you see my presentation?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So I'm going to share a little bit about some of the projects in Willapa Bay and this kind of new old technology called Motus tracking. And if I go too fast, please tell me to slow down because I tend to talk fast when I'm giving presentations. And I will, I'm just going to go ahead and, okay. So, oops, how do I get rid of that? Okay. Uh-oh. So this past year, with help from partners, we installed 3 Motus towers to track migratory birds, bats, and insects in Nakata, Tokeland, Washington, and at Bullard's Bridge in Bandon, Oregon. So this is part of the Motus initiative in the West, coordinated by Partners in Flight with many partners, and this includes like NGOs, state and federal agencies. So what is Motus? Motus means movement in Latin. Motus is an international collaborative endeavor to track the movement of small flying animals, mostly birds, but also bats and insects. So small birds are outfitted with tags, and weight is really important not to compromise the bird's fitness. These birds fly by a tower. The signal is transmitted and detected by the receiver, and then the data is automatically uploaded into a Motus database through cellular and Wi-Fi technology. So all the tags are operating on one frequency, but each tag is coded with a specific ID. So, so Motus is a network. It's network-based. It combines the collaborative power of individual research projects into one massive coordinated effort that can expand the scale and impacts of everybody's work. So the Motus, Motus has been tracking animals for years. So it's mostly on our continent. It's in the East Coast. So there's about 650 receiver stations functioning right now, 172 species tagged, around 15,000 animals, individual animals tagged, and a contribution of 522 partners involved. So it's quite a big endeavor, but just recently moving to the West Coast. So why use Motus? Conservation of migratory bird species is challenging because it requires considering threats at different stages in their life cycle that span multiple jurisdictions and habitats that are many thousands of miles apart. Motus is one tool that we can use to figure out where the bottlenecks are occurring, where populations might be limited, and help us determine which conservation action might have the greatest impact. So here are some of the benefits of using Motus. They're small devices for small animals. They're continuously monitoring. They can detect birds from the tower at a range of about 10 miles from the tower itself. There's no need to recapture the birds so that the data is automatically uploaded. It's centrally managed database, so everybody is sharing information, and there's multiple partners, so you can actually see what partner is tagging which birds at any given time. So here's some examples of receiver station locations. You can put them on buildings, poles. There's an individual like tripod setup. So you can pretty much put a Motus tower anywhere there's a structure and that you can get it high enough so you have a clear line of sight of birds passing by. And so for on the coast, it's really important to get it up high. So if we're tracking shorebirds, for example, you can see, them flying by offshore. So this was our second tower in the Pacific Northwest. The Nakata Tower was our second site. Grace Harbor, there's a tower over that overlooks Grace Harbor Wildlife Area, or the Fish and Wildlife Service National Wildlife Refuge. And I was fortunate enough to work with Willapa Bay National Wildlife Refuge, who connected me to Kathleen and Frank, who amazingly had a huge radio tower in their front yard. So this was a wonderful experience, and I learned so much from them on the project and how to install Motus towers, and just everything about Motus, the radio technology part of it. So that was our first tower, and that is currently operating out towards the bay. So you can kind of see the depiction on the left is how the antennas are picking up the area. And so any bird that flies by within those yellow lines will be detected. So our second site is up at Tokeland, Washington. I was fortunate enough to work with the Shoalwater Bay Tribe, who is hosting a tower on top of their tribal museum. So you can see the coverage for this tower. So all the tags flying by in this area will be picked up, and that data will automatically be uploaded into the Motus network. We also installed a tower this past summer at Bandon on Bullard's Bridge. So the tower has only been up a few months, and we're already tracking sanderling and western sandpiper. And these birds were tracked, or actually tagged, in Tofino, Canada, and south in San Francisco Bay. So all of these towers that we have up now are currently tracking and detecting shorebirds, mostly these two species that are being tagged elsewhere. So, and then ODOT put together a nice story for us for that tower. So here's an example of the range of the station and the type of data we can collect. So if you go to the Motus site on our project, you can actually see which species you're detecting, when it passed by the tower. And then if you click on the individual project, you can actually see which project it's associated with and who put on the tag and what the goal of the project was. So this year we have funding for 3 additional towers. And so we are going to be putting towers up at Billy Frank Jr. Nisqually Refuge in this green dot, Cape Mears, and Newport. So you can see Willapa Bay is, and our 2 towers in Willapa Bay is very essential for that connection as birds fly up the Flyway. So that's just something to note. So I'm interested, so this is an example of the East Coast on some of the, so that you can see that they have many towers up on the East Coast and these birds. So you can really start to get an idea of how the birds are using a site. And then if you expand this to the greater Flyway, you can see how the birds are tracking and where they're actually going. I'm interested in shorebirds. So other people are tracking bats, insects, other types of songbirds, but I'm interested in learning more about shorebirds using our estuaries, how the sites like Willapa Bay and Grace Harbor fit into the larger picture within the Flyway, and using our area to detect when birds are showing unusual migration patterns, like low numbers, adjusted timing duration during migration, and length of stay. So maybe you've seen this graphic from a paper that came out a few years ago, finding the major declines in birds. It's called 3 billion birds lost. These losses are not just for endangered species or threatened species, but we're also losing common species. So there are many causes of the declines, but one of them is habitat loss. And you can see shorebirds, grassland birds, and aerial insectivores are in decline. So we're worried about these species. And Willapa Bay is a huge stopover site for shorebirds and a very important site, because if they don't feed during migration, they will not make it to the Arctic to breed. We're all sharing the data with a Partners in Flight Motus group, and anybody is welcome to join that group. So we have this spreadsheet where everybody within the Flyway, Pacific Flyway, are tracking where they're putting towers so we can avoid overlap And here's a picture of, so in 2017, there were basically 2 or 3 towers, mostly in British Columbia by Environment Canada. Here's Motus towers today. So the network is expanding down the Flyway. And here is the projected sites, which have actually, most of them have come online. We're also, I think they're putting 13 Motus stations in San Francisco Bay and 17 in Mexico to track red knots. And as you know, red knots, maybe you don't know, but red knots are they stop by Willapa Bay and Grace Harbor, and they're a key site for us. So with these Motus towers we put up, we'll be able to track those birds. And then something else that that I coordinate, it's the Pacific Flyway Shorebird Survey, which is coming up this November, December. And it's a really important flyway on a larger scale to actually, capture numbers and detect trends. And if anyone is interested in that, please contact me. And even if you don't know shorebirds, we can connect you with somebody who does and get you out to see what it's all about. So that's it for me. Okay.
This is Doug, and I have a question. I don't know if you deal with this. I live in a place where there are really a lot of mallards. I live right at the south end of Willapa Bay, where the Nasal River flows in. And last year, I used to be a statistician many years ago. But so I did kind of a statistical counting of the mallards kind of in my front yard. And there were over 2,000.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
Yeah. And this year, they're just starting to come in now, not in anywhere near those numbers. And it's much later. I didn't record it or anything, but it seems to be much later. And I just wondered if you knew anything about that, because there's a pretty dramatic change.
Right. I mean, those are the exact questions we're trying to answer with timing. And our greatest resource is the community who sees that, because we have no idea that happens. And then Susan De La Cruz, she's doing more waterbird surveys, and I'm not sure it's for trends, but capturing that kind of information is really important. So I don't know why that's happening, but it definitely could be climate related. We're seeing a lot of crazy stuff right now with birds. So yeah. And then, for Brant, they're talking about using Motus for Brant to track that. So, but mallards are a great indicator because they're very common, and we can really see what's going on with their behavior over time. So.
Somebody's got their hand up, Tim Matson.
Yeah, I'm just curious. You're putting these what look like really uncomfortable tags on these birds. What powers them? I assume there's a battery on there, which means there's a lifespan for a tag. And then the follow-on question I'll ask now, has been thought about passive powerings, or like how we do with RFID tags? But at any rate, how long does the battery last on those?
Yeah, so the nano tags, which most people are using, are actually just so the feathers are shaved down and glued on the back, so they're very small, and they fall off. They're about a year or probably one full season worth of data, and then those are powered by batteries. And then cellular tracking technology has put out a life tag, which is more of a little solar panel that's actually put on with a harness. And those are great questions, as Motus expands and more birds are tagged, is, how are these, harnesses impacting birds? And there's been a lot of studies on the Atlantic coast on designing them so there's less impact to the birds. But the life tags will last the life of the birds. So that bird is wearing that harness for its whole life. So, but actually getting data, and yeah. So I hope that answers.
And anybody else have other questions for her? I will say it's been fun to have more antennas on the tower that we put up in our yard. I think we put 4 up for this system, and it's looking like a regular commercial tower now. It has stuff hanging all over it.
Yeah, you're a key site. So thank you, Kathleen. Okay, sign off.
Well,